Coming up in today's show.
You were accosted by several Gardaí whilst beating the bower on with a straw hat on, and it didn't knock a steam out of you. So,
4 years of business studies in one sentence. One sentence.
please, Diarmuid, we'd like to hear that.
It depends how you count it.
So you're on your 6th or 7th booster now, Diarmuid, are you?
No, I didn't. But I did get tested twice.
Do you regret that?
I do, actually. Second richest country in the world.
Yes.
Yes, for a number of years. And then one day, we woke up, and no, we weren't the second richest country after all.
Do you know what I mean? This mimics a tinfoil hat, basically.
Indeed.
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
and-
yeah. Okay, fair enough.
And the interesting thing about the tinfoil hat,
Not all superheroes wears capes. Some wear wellies. Wellies.
Hello, everyone, and you are very, very welcome to the James Conway Experience. I have a very unique and a man who's very dear to my heart. I thought I was Sligo's wildest candidate, but no, I'm not. I wasn't near it at all. I wasn't at the races at all. But I have the straw man with me here this evening, Diarmuid McConville, the one and only, who was just fresh from his national election campaign. And I have to tell everyone, I had to invite him on the show because I heard him on Ocean FM and I thought he was brilliant because he just said what he wanted to say. He didn't pass any heed to what anyone was telling him. He didn't even pass any heed to the questions. He just went with it, whatever way suited. Diarmuid, you are most welcome. So you are.
Gura Mahagat, thank you. It's great to be here.
And I have to say it, Diarmuid, thank you very much as well. You have supported me in my court proceedings for trying to stand up for little dear Ireland. And you were accosted by several Gardaí whilst beating the bower on with a straw hat on, and it didn't knock a steam out of you. So more of this is needed in Ireland, people.
Well,
more of this is needed.
We've got to help each other.
Well, I appreciate what you've done for me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let everyone know who you are and where you grew up and where did Diarmuid become the character we see here today.
Well, long story, so, you know.
Oh, we have time.
Cut me short when you've had enough. Born in Dublin, grew up in Sligo, Mahara boy, so we would have been the last house in town at that time. Tim's had a farm next to us, so there was houses, there was our house, and then there was Tim's farm. So we were in the town, but we were right on the edge and always be, you know, wandering out the country and that kind of thing. It's all built up now, and there's even more coming, but we'll talk about that later. I suppose you could say I'm a fierce multicultural sort of guy.
Yeah.
Mother from a European country. We spent a couple of years when we were kids out in Africa.
Yeah.
Beautiful, amazing, learned a lot out there. And foolishly decided to study business studies.
Yes.
At university level. And if you want, I can summarise 4 years of business studies in one sentence. One sentence.
Please, Diarmuid, we'd like to hear that.
It depends how you count it. It's true. Do you remember the old Celtic tiger?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And we were the second richest country in the world.
Yes.
Yes, for a number of years. And then one day, we woke up, and no, we weren't the second richest country after all. We were one of the poorest overnight. And potentially something similar might be lining up for us now. But
now, you're using the word potentially there very wryly. I can tell. How likely is it?
I've come to the conclusion, for what it's worth, that all this economic stuff is decided by 12 guys in a room in New York or London or whatever, yeah? So when they want a big economic crash, someone picks up the phone. Hey, guys, we want a big economic crash and we want to start next Wednesday at 2:30. Yes, boss. And that's the way it works. So it's all up to the top guys. If they want an economic crash, they'll provide an economic crash. If they want to keep spinning things along, they'll keep spinning things along.
Well, can I ask you a business question then, Diarmuid? Let's say tomorrow morning you were the head of a nation. Would it be a good business policy to fall out with the nation of Israel, or a bad decision to fall out with the nation of Israel?
Well, to an extent, we've possibly already fallen out with them.
Yeah.
Well, the politicians haven't, but we the people have. It would be possibly a wee bit on the dangerous side, but, live dangerously. I think the key thing from a business point of view is make sure we have enough food.
Yeah.
Make sure we have enough food. We have enough water. As we see now, there's problems in Holyhead and deliveries and so on. So even though we're an agricultural nation, we import a huge amount of food.
Yeah.
But if we had one good year of farming, then we could have an argument with the Israelis.
Yeah.
Get our food stocks up, and then that's it.
How do you think we're placed for an argument at the moment?
It's interesting. The Israelis closed the embassy and all that, but I think the only reason they did that, they're saying that because we joined the Court of Justice case and different reasons, we recognise the Palestinians, but other countries have done that and they're not closing the embassies there. So the only reason I can think of is they want to boost the popularity of Micheál Martin and what's the other guy, Simon Harris. Yeah. These two boys are letting the Israelis fly over the whole time with all their ammunitions and whatnot, and you see them in the sky, convoys, 2 planes flying together. That's not civilian, that's military. So at the moment, our politicians, they're wrapping the Palestinian flag around themselves, they're crying crocodile tears for the poor old Palestinians, but when it comes down to it, they'll do anything the Israelis tell them to do. They'll do it discreetly, they do it very quietly, but they're basically doing what they're told. So I think the reason, now the Israelis know the general population here are not fans of the Israelis, so that's why they've closed the embassy, and they're accusing Simon Harris of being anti-Semitic. They want to boost his popularity, and they know, well, if the Israelis have a go at him, the plain people of Ireland think, well, if the Israelis are having a go at him, he can't be all that bad.
I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because it's one of those, watch what they do, not what they say.
Yeah.
And I just don't see at the moment how Ireland is, what are we doing? What are we doing to help the situation? We're talking a really good game.
That's it.
But we're not doing.
Yeah.
It's like there's a couple of companies in this country who are developing chips, things like that are used in Israeli munitions. And you can't come out all guns blazing and still sell, what is being made here.
The On the Ditch crowd had an article saying that the National Treasury Management Agency has investment in Palantir, or one of those Israeli-friendly companies. So we're investing in a company which is involved in the old Israeli Defence Force massacres, basically. And at the same time, we go, it's terrible what's happening there. But as you say, we have all these connections. It's
I don't know though. My perspective of looking at it is, I think they have us lined up as possibly the only developed nation who have really stated categorically that, we're against what's going on. And I genuinely think we're going to be heavily punished for that.
Touch wood, I hope not. They're certainly cranking up the old propaganda machine over there, and even in America, some senator was come out.
Well, you see, America's where it's at for me, because there's a lot of American companies in Ireland who have very, very strong ties and linkages to the nation of Israel. And yeah, I don't think they're going to let us away with this. Like your viewpoint to me is interesting, to say it's to increase their popularity because they're allowing things to happen and all the rest of it. But to me, I think rhetoric is very important, and I don't think they're going to allow rhetoric like that to go unpunished. And they have the capability of economically damaging countries, you know.
Absolutely, they specialise in it, have done for years. I mean, one thing about the American companies here, a lad was working in Intel back in the day, and he said, all white South Africans and Israeli Jews. Now, I'm sure that's an exaggeration. I'm sure there's plenty of ethnic Irish working at Intel, but there might be a disproportionate amount of people from those countries. But certainly we got a lot of people working in American companies, a lot of wages, a lot of big salaries. So it's a pressure point, and you know, we have to be ready for it. They could pull the plug tomorrow.
Well, you see, that's where my perspective of it is. I don't think the majority of the Irish nation is ready for a situation like that. I think there's kind of...
They'd probably ask a very simple question, like, why would they do something like that? You know, because they wouldn't see a benefit.
Oh, well, why would they do something like that? You're the only developed nation, really, that's pinned your colours to the mast. You know, South Africa took out that law case, but you have to look at South Africa and their relationship with Israel. There's been so much diamond production in South Africa over the years, and it's predominantly Jewish brokers, and the South Africans would have felt that they were, you know, badly treated in deals and stuff like that. So there's a bit of, well, you could refer to it as anti-Semitism, I suppose, in South Africa. But we've backed up this court case, and I don't know, as I says, I don't admire what's happening in Palestine, but I'm not so silly to think that Israel doesn't affect global geopolitics. They do.
Yeah.
You know, the Israeli backing of presidential candidates in America is huge. You know, they are a really, really powerful group. And Trump is entirely pro-Israel.
Unfortunately.
Well, the mainstream media, are they covering this?
Well,
in any way,
the American mainstream media for years has not been highlighting Palestinian issues. You know, they don't highlight it, and the reason for it is there's so much subversion and stuff like that. It's one of those things. How do I say it? Israel has done a really, really clever job of garnering control of other countries' media and politics to a great degree. And a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, they're behind Everton and that. I don't think they're behind Everton. I think there's a lot of populations who just kind of go with the flow and allow things to happen, you know. But I do think Ireland is going to be particularly punished. I really do.
I remember the shock I got years ago when I was researching who owns the various media groups in Ireland.
Yes.
And a shiver ran down my spine when I thought, hang on, all the major media groups in Ireland they either have big Israeli backing, or they're partnered with Israelis, or like the Irish Times, you can't figure out who owns it, so it might as well be the Israelis. So we even have RTE guy would be sympathetic, an Englishman, but sympathetic to the Israeli point of view, and he's the head of RTE. You have a guy in Commission Amman in charge of the internet, another Israeli sympathetic person from England, and these are relatively recent appointments, so they have a lot of power here.
Have you noticed a pattern that an awful lot of the, we'll say, leadership of kind of important Irish sectors, policing, RTE, why all of a sudden does it seem to be there's a lot of kind of English who are in those positions? Like, it's strange to me.
It is strange. It is strange. And I think possibly part of it is, did you ever hear this thing called revelation of the method? So it's a theory, the old nonsense black magic stuff, but they're doing whatever bad stuff they're doing, and they're generally keeping it secret. But every so often, they let us know. They show us straight out in front, hey, we're doing all this bad stuff, and then they distract you with something else. But they do actually show us occasionally. And the theory is that something along the lines of if you tell people all the bad stuff you're doing and they don't react, that kind of helps keep them in a kind of hypnosis or something like that.
What they claim is their ignorance that keeps them there then. You know, that's kind of what their whole thing is, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, isn't that the whole
Masonic thing, I think, is it?
It isn't. Well, it's a base of Masonry that you allow the trick to be seen. And that kind of ties in with magic and things. You can believe in magic or you can't. But the essence of a good trick is that it was done entirely in front of you. And it's really only your ignorance of the process that makes it magic.
Yes.
You know, fundamentally, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
But if I can carry out the illusion so adeptly in front of your eyes, that's why it's magic.
Yeah.
You know, that's where its power is derived from. So, you know, that kind of segues into what I'm going to ask you next, Diarmuid, which is the pandemic, you know. What was your opinion? I'd say you're on your 6th or 7th booster now, Diarmuid, are you?
No, I didn't. But I did get tested twice. Do you
regret that?
I do, actually, and particularly because I asked them to go easy, you know, up the nose. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
And they didn't go easy. Well, I got tested once here in Ireland and then once in Germany on the way back. There's a funny story about the test in Germany. So it's out at some kind of car park scenario and there's a little booth and whatever, and they're all dressed up in the gear. And they're only young ones. They're only 19, 20, you know. And they come out and they do the thing and then they go off into the booth. And I'm looking in the mirror and I noticed that they've taken off their protective gear, and I noticed the tight trousers of a beautiful girl. Yeah, you know, tight trousers as you see so often around the place these days. And next thing, I see your man's hand on her backside. And these guys are supposed to be testing for a deadly pandemic virus. And then the guy sees me, he notices that I've seen him, you know, and then he's all professional and puts his gear back on. Oh, yes, you're fine, you know. And it was just funny that in the middle of this supposed pandemic, now, in fairness, for a couple of hours, maybe 2 weeks into it, when the traffic starts going off the roads. It was a couple of weeks in, and suddenly there's very little traffic on the roads. And for a couple of hours, I thought, maybe Leo Varadkar is telling us the truth here. Maybe. But that only lasted a few hours, and I said, no, they're lying. And it was, you know yourself, it was bizarre.
What's your opinion of it now? What do you think occurred?
I don't think, I don't even think viruses cause disease. I think there's various scientists and doctor chappies and whatnot are out there going, look, what the virus thing comes from 1955 and Frank Anders, I think, or Enders, and he won the Nobel Prize sometime in the 50s. I've discovered the viruses. I'm so amazing. Here's your Nobel Prize, sir. And there are people who dispute that. So they are finding bits of DNA in the microscopes, but the bits of DNA that they find are just bits from your own DNA or bacteria or, you know, stuff like that, kind of scrap old bits of DNA, and they're saying, oh, this is a fragment of a virus. So that's the theory I've heard, and I like it, and I'm running with that. I believe in bacteria, but not in viruses. So I don't think there was, people get sick the whole time, you know, and the flu disappeared when the COVID was around. So all you have to do is go, okay, if you got flu, we'll call it COVID, and there you go, there's your sick people. I I'm not a fan of the old mobile phones as well, and I think there's potential there for, special zap operations. James has been a nice guy up till now, but you know what? You need special treatment. Program in that daga daga daga. That's why I have my little electrosmog meter for detecting.
You don't use the mobile at all. You use strictly the landline.
Strictly the landline. Now, I was an early adopter of the mobile phones back in 98 or 99, sometime like that, and I was chuffed. So yeah, I got the phone and everything. But I did notice that after even a short conversation with someone, I'd have a pain in my ear. And I got in contact with the mobile phone company, and they were very rude to me. So I thought, that's interesting. They kind of laughed at me. So I'm a customer. I'm coming here with a genuine concern. If you're going to laugh at me, there's something not right. The other thing I noticed was that for the first, say, 10 or more years of the mobile phones, it was very expensive to ring a mobile phone from a landline. It was crazy money. But to ring a landline from a mobile phone was reasonable. So it was clear that for 10 years at least, the economic thing was to push you into getting a mobile phone just so you could ring other mobile phones at a cheap rate.
That's an awesome observation.
Well, I was raging about it for 10 years, and then one day I rang them up and I was trying to get a better deal. And they go, yeah, no problem. You can ring your mobile phones for free now. And I go, hang on, 10 years. And I know of people who, that's the reason they got a mobile phone, because it was so expensive to ring a mobile phone from a landline. But then they had enough penetration. They, okay, we'll let you ring the mobile phones for free now.
Well, one of the things, there was rental on the landline as well, wasn't there? You were paying for the service of it. That was actually, it was quite expensive at the time.
Yes. It's a bit better now, but they were definitely making it more expensive on the landline than on the mobile. So it was a push thing. Come on, why waste money, But it's interesting, they're still heavily advertising mobile phones, even though everyone's got one. They're still pushing them big time. And there's a bit of a movement, there are various people around the place, and even some youngsters. And the argument a lot of parents make is, my kid needs a mobile phone, otherwise he's going to be left out. But this particular youngster, I know, the parents gave him a phone, all right, but he's just not interested, But he's...
What's his line of thinking behind that?
Because
that's unusual for a young person. Though.
Yeah, I think it's a distraction. I think he doesn't need it, You can call to see your friends. You're in school with them, so you can make an arrangement in school. I'll see you this afternoon or whatever. It's a distraction. And also, as it happens, he's quite a tall chap. And he reckons it stunts your growth. And his other friends who have mobile phones disagree with him, but as he says, they're all smaller than me, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's a confidence thing as well. He's, he has his friends. He doesn't need a phone to keep in touch with them. He has his hobbies, whatever he has. You don't need a phone for your hobby.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was interesting. And it was interesting that the parents, out of genuine love for the kid, we'll get you a phone. But he wasn't asking for it. And he still has it, but I don't know where it is. It's somewhere down, it's not actually necessary. And, how many thousands of years did we live perfectly decent lives without it?
Well, that's it. And I think as well now it's gone so much further than just being a phone. It's basically a computer in your pocket. But like I always reference, there's Darren there, and he's absolutely brilliant at, how would I say it, designating times for it. You don't use it that much. It's there. Whereas I find, like, I started doing, since we started the podcast, I downloaded one app, which was TikTok, to try and get the podcast out there and all that. And I'm already going, no, this is taking too much. Because what I do is I dedicate too much time to it. And it's really difficult to know how to not. Do you know?
Well, I mean, there's one simple step. And as the fella says, anything you can do on the mobile, you can do better on a computer.
Yeah.
Better. Any app, anything, any single thing you can do with the mobile, you can do it better on a computer. So the only advantage of the mobile is you can do it when you're in the toilet. You can do it when you're driving down the road. So the only advantage of the mobile is you're mobile when you're doing it. Whereas if you put all your communications onto something fixed, then you know, okay, this week I want to sort out the TikTok, I want to sort out X, Y, and Z. And then you look, okay, when's the best time to do that? Well, in the morning, maybe before I go out, or in the evening when I come back. And then you have it. The thing with the mobile is it's with you the whole time.
Yeah, but you see, one of the things that for myself, so when I'm going to work or that, it could be leaving at 6, something like that, then you hop into the work van, and what I can do is do a few things whilst I'm going to work.
Yes.
And then maybe at lunchtime, and then
While safety in traffic, of course.
well, I can be passenger. So I'm chauffeured. But yeah, no, I do use it like that. And
yes, now, there you're bringing up a major issue, and the lads in Germany mentioned it to me. Back in the day at break time, or when you're driving into work, people used to chat, man. They used to talk.
Yeah.
So what you're doing on the phone is you're talking to people out there in internet land.
Well, I've noticed that because my most recent job is with my best friend, do you know? And before the podcast started, you know, the crack in the bars and the evenings, absolutely savage. But you don't have the same crack when every so often you're trying to fire off this or fire off that.
Well, I would say, okay, you're in one way it's a good use of your time because you're traveling, and then you know you have that time. You can also do the internet stuff, but really, that time with your mates is more precious than updating the stuff.
Yeah,
and you got to go. How much time do you need in the week for updating the stuff? A couple of hours.
I think I'm going to hand over this TikTok account to you, Darren. Yeah.
We can edit it.
I think I'll send you one video a week and say,
Well,
stick it up on that.
It is a good point because you have to think as well. Okay, not only is your time during that time with your mate taken, right?
Yeah.
Your focus.
You're taken. You see, this is what...
And I totally get where you're coming from. I put something up, 2 hours later, I'm doing something else. I'll nearly find myself going to the computer just to see.
check.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Now, at least you're only whipping it out of your pocket, maybe having a quick look. For me now, because I don't really do much on the fucking phone, I'm finding myself going in, you know.
Yeah, into the computer.
Yeah, and then into the house, and sure, while I'm in the house, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then like, you know, so all of this, it is all about focus, you know, and for me, usually I'm very focused on one thing, you know, especially when it's work or work related.
Yeah.
But I do find that definitely it comes into my head when it shouldn't be. You know.
Well, my thing with it is, we started this with the best of intentions that it would be one episode a week, record it, put it up. But the amount of promotion and getting back to people and that you have to do, like, it's taken up a lot more hours than I thought it would. Now, thank God it's you know, somewhat successful or that, and it's taken off okay. But yeah, I don't think most people realise, you know, I have to get in contact with yourself, organise a day. Then Darren is editing the videos from last week, and all of this is going on in the background. And
just conversations. What day are you working? What day am I working? Well, I'm working when you're not working, and you're working when I'm working.
Yeah, that's
you know, it's kind of like, you know, if we find ourselves running in the door of a shed at like 8 o'clock in the evening, trying to set up just to get a conversation going. It's kind of, you know, but that's what it takes. And
you can delegate some of it, you know.
Well, you see, we are. But at the same time, it's two of you. So both of us are still working. Do you know what I mean? So when can we meet up? I can meet up at this stage. It's the same thing as Darren says there. And then you have to get in contact with the person who's coming and see, does that suit them? Which is another aspect of it. You know, it's just like getting back to the phone. I think there's a lot of people that you see and you say they're stuck to the phone, but they might have a lot going on. Do you know?
Yes, but again, but even what you're talking about, uploading stuff, is it easier to do with a proper computer and a full screen, or is it easier to do on the phone?
Well, Darren, you'd have to come in there, mate, because that's your development.
Yeah, like I'm laptop and computers all the way. But it's when you were mentioning that earlier, I remember years ago when Instagram first came out, they actually made the usability way more easier on their app, and you couldn't actually use a web browser or anything like that to actually upload onto Instagram. You could only browse. So 10 years ago, they were already nailing what you were saying and actually restricting usability. There's no reason other than like they wanted that app on your phone, you know. Yeah. So there's definitely traits like that. Same with even online banking now. You want to do something on a browser, you nearly have to need this other machine for your ATM, for your card to go in and put in a code to get another code to put into the computer.
But can you put an app on your laptop or on your computer?
No, I think the online banking is far easier on the phone.
Yeah, it is, you know.
Far easier.
Yeah, and it's not by
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
No, I think you were right.
Yeah,
but I think
you are right.
Changed. Yeah. I think now they've created a situation where they want your data. And they want your data in a device that's with you constantly. So they've adapted everything to be simpler on the phone.
They're tempting us into it. Now, you know what this baby here does?
The Faraday cage.
The Faraday cage. The Faraday
the biscuit
tin. See, it's picking up. But
an ammunition box is another good one.
Yeah. So what I say to people who have the phone but are a bit concerned about it, well, get a steel box. Put the phone in a steel box. When you want to check or you need to make the call, open up the steel box, make your call, close the steel box. The other little gadget now, the label says made in England. I don't know is it true, but that's what the label says. And this is a mixture of plastic, which I don't like, and silver. Oh. Very expensive. I won't say how much it was, but you know, worthwhile. And
they are worthwhile because I've actually got T-shirts and hats with silver lines as well.
Oh,
yeah. And like the beanie hats, they're only €30, €40, something like that. There's no reason anyone shouldn't have one, you know.
And is this, and I don't want to make the kind of the association. Do you know what I mean? This mimics a tinfoil hat, basically.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay, fair enough.
And the interesting thing about the tinfoil hat is some film in the late 60s, I think, or early 70s. And the theory is that even back then, they were playing around with the old electromagnetism and fucking with people through electromagnetism.
But isn't this... So, in the Vietnam War... Mm-hmm. They had developed technology that an electromagnetic pulse could be sent into the opposing side to make them feel medical anxiety. So they were working on these things at the time, and then all of a sudden they make the tinfoil hat thing a subject of ridicule.
Exactly.
And then you end up in a situation where nobody wants to do anything like that because it seems so ridiculous. But what you're saying is now there's clothing and everything and nobody would know. Nobody would know what you're wearing. Do you know? That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a bit like Dr. Strangelove, if you ever saw it.
Fabulous film.
And there's one thing that
Orson Welles done it, wasn't it?
I can't remember. Was it Kubrick or one?
Oh, it was Kubrick.
Big name. Yeah. But anyway, the crazy nuclear bomb general was very against fluoride in the water, and it comes back up several times in the film. Oh, it's crazy that they're he's totally against it. And he comes across, he's a blood crazy, mass murdering atomic bomb general, so he's a crazy guy. And as part of that craziness, he doesn't like fluoride in the water. Now, all these years later, if RFK gets to be health secretary, he doesn't like fluoride in the water. And I'm not a fan of fluoride in the water, but they were making fun of people who didn't want fluoride in the water back in the 60s and put it into a big Hollywood film and, oh, you don't like fluoride in the water, oh, you're one of those crazy nuclear bomb general type people,
That's... You see, there's so many aspects of that in film. Like, one of the things that I thought was remarkable, the backlash that John Ford got for one Western in particular, it was called The Searchers. And John Wayne was the hero of the film, but he was very racist.
Oh.
And he got an enormous amount of backlash for portraying the hero of a film as someone who he didn't like the Indians. And it wasn't this kind of thing, oh, they're all on horseback, I'm going to shoot them. No, he genuinely despised them. And, like, people were given out to Ford for making the hero of the film a kind of an anti-hero, if you get me. And all of these things happens in film throughout the years, and you're kind of wondering decades later, what were you trying to instill there? Do you know?
Yeah. The film is, you're kind of in a trance when you're watching a good film.
Yes.
And they've controlled it from the start, and they love putting in whatever bit of propaganda they're pushing at the time. They put it into the films.
Well, it's it's an association some people don't make, but Hollywood, the wood of holly. So all druids had a staff or a wand made from the wood of a holly tree. So they're basically telling you, we're casting spells.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here. We're casting spells. We do it for whoever pays the highest money.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a grim business. It's a grim business. And funny, the Kennedys, the grandfather was Joe Kennedy. He was in the movie business for a while, and according to reports I've read, he was very critical of the Jewish influence.
Yes.
Extremely critical. Even JFK, according to his diaries, he was also very critical of the Jewish influence. And even now, RFK Jr., and he's bowing down to the Zionists 100%. Like, he's 100% supporting them. He's never criticised them, ever. But I was talking to a fellow who saw him with, there's some rabbi who's into all sex toys and all that nonsense, and RFK is supposedly buddies with them. But he saw a clip of them together, and the rabbi says something awful, and you can see in RFK's eyes, he hates this guy. He hates the rabbi. Now, he's not saying that. His words are all, oh, I love you, and, God bless Israel. But I think, deep down inside, I think he doesn't like them. He knows this is bad, and I hope he's playing a bit of a double game.
I don't know. You see, I think it's so blatantly obvious that Trump has gone along with them that I don't think anyone is going to change that. Moving the embassy from, was it Tel Aviv to Jerusalem?
Shocking.
Well, listen, some people think it's shocking, some people think it's awesome. Yeah. But it was, it was telling the state of Israel that, I do believe you should be here, and I'm going to recognise that I think you should be here, and
yeah.
People get stuck into the whole tangent of who was there first, and I don't agree with that. I think there was a multitude of people there, and there was Jews there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, all the way.
Yeah. And I think that's the wrong argument to get into, was who was there first. You know, I think that's the wrong argument to get into in Ireland, because you're at a stage now where you have people of Norman origin, people of Viking origin, people of European, African origin, and you come to a place where, you know, you have this kind of ethno-nationalist thing at the moment, where unless your mum and dad was Irish and you were born in Ireland and your grandparents were born in Ireland, and I don't agree with that. I think it's nonsense, to be honest about it. Well, I think if you're someone who lives in Ireland, has came to it properly, is of Irish heritage, I think that's enough. Do you know? I don't think if your granny was Scottish that you need to be thrown off a cliff. I don't think that.
It's funny. I went to a gathering of the Orange Men in Enniskillen, and
that's a controversial way to go.
yeah.
Fair enough.
And it was the most ethnic Irish gathering I've been at in years. But they had a foreigner. They had a wee Scotch lady. And they brought her out, you know, and she still had the Scottish accent. She's married in Northern Ireland for 50 years. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I think there'd be a historical context there. There was a lot of them came from Scotland.
Of course, but that's the interesting thing about it. Even though a lot of them came from Scotland, they're still going, oh, look, we have, you know, special person here tonight, Scottish person. And I do agree, you know, we're a mixed bunch, you know, always have been.
Yeah.
But when the first black people started appearing in Dublin, I used to cross the road and shake hands with them.
Yes, to welcome them.
To welcome them. And, you know, I am a welcoming guy and all that. But then something happened to change my mind. I was at a conference in Maynooth on the alternative media. And I was invited to speak along with some other people. It was great. I'm invited to speak. Oh, wow. And so I said my piece. And then there's two lads from Nigeria got up. And they were refugees, supposedly. And they said their piece. And I said to them, you know, someone who opposes the government and struggles and has to flee the country, you know, it's a good adventure story, yeah? You know, the bad government, and we had to get up in the middle of the night and the cops were chasing us and we swam across the border, you know. So I was asking them for, you know, maybe you could explain a bit about why you had to leave your country. Now, they're presenting themselves as political refugees, and his attitude was the wrong attitude. If you asked an Irish man who had to flee the country, oh, you know, what's the story? He'd go, yeah, it was terrible, and the bits did this, and the bits did that, and blah, 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 blah. You'd find it hard to shut him up about, you know, whatever reason he was involved in the politics. But these two boys did not want to discuss it. And I go, okay, there's something doesn't add up. Now, you could say, oh, we're so scared the government will hunt us down, the Nigerian government will hunt us down in Ireland. But if that's the case, why are you up speaking on a public platform? Could
it be the case, though, Diarmuid, that they simply didn't want to speak about it? Do you know, it can be a sore subject. Because I remember at one time being in England, and an Irish guy asked me, he said, you know, are you from the town or the countryside? And I says, well, I'm from the countryside. And he said, do you know, do you come from a farm? But that, and I says, I come from a farm, yeah. And how many acres was it? And I told him how many acres it was.
Oh, that's a very personal question.
Yeah, but then he goes, and do you have many brothers? And I says, no. I says, I'm the only son. And he just goes, well, why are you here? And it was a sore enough subject for me to go, you know, I came here for this, that, and the other. And he goes, yeah, but sure, you'll be at home. You'll get the farm. What are you doing here? You know, so it can be a sore subject for some people. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Especially because that would have been the first occasion you met them. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but they are speaking in public, and they are
Yeah,
presenting themselves in public as refugees.
yeah.
So, what's the story, boys? It would be the equivalent of someone from the north, for argument's sake, had to leave because they were involved in Republican stuff or whatever,
Yeah.
and going to America. And, they'd stand up,
Oh,
they
no,
had
they
to
wouldn't.
leave.
No. I'd be very surprised. If you had someone from Northern Ireland who fled because they were involved in Republican activity, they wouldn't be telling anyone. Not fear of it.
Well,
That's the first class ticket to be back home and back in prison. No way. No way. I don't think so.
put another way, there would be plenty of people in America from the north speaking about the terrible things that were happening.
Well,
They might not be directly involved, but
Here, let me put this one to you, right? Let's say they were involved in a rebel movement in Nigeria, okay? And this is only hypothetical, if you get me. But let's say then they had to flee. It's you either flee or not. They might have had the best of reasons for being involved in it, all that. But I know if I went elsewhere or that, I wouldn't. I'd probably come up with a different story to try and keep this kind of suspicion away or that. But I reckon there's a lot of people in that position. Do you know? This
Yes.
is where the problem with the no vetting comes in.
yeah.
Because we don't know, there's people who flee their country for one reason, and there's people who flee their country for another reason. So, like a simple thing, let's say someone is the town drug lord, and all of a sudden a new town drug lord arrives on the scene and basically says, I'm going to find you anywhere you are. And then he hops on a plane and heads to Ireland. Well, he's still a drug lord. Do you know? He's not going to exactly sit around for a week or two and figure things out. He's going to go back doing what he knows how to do.
Yeah.
And I reckon this is when the trouble starts with no vetting.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's like your man from Zimbabwe who kills his second wife and one or two other people. And next thing you know, well, he has to get out of Zimbabwe because you can't go around killing people there. The cops come along and go, hey, you killed someone. So a lot of countries in the world, and I want to know who gave him the idea. Red Cow Inn in Dublin. That's where you want to go. And sure enough, the Zimbabwe papers figure it out fairly quickly. He's in Dublin. He's in the Red Cow Hotel in Dublin. And the Irish papers like, oh no, misinformation. The cops go to the Red Cow Hotel. They're looking for the guy by this name. No one by that name there. They go, oh no, it's all information. No one by that name there. 3 months later, they go back to the Red Cow Hotel. Oh yeah, he is here. He was using a different name. So I would say there's few enough of the people coming under the refugee thing who are genuinely against their own governments. I'd say there's few enough.
Oh, it's few and far between. But you
Yeah.
see, this is the problem. You can no longer have a conversation. I have absolutely no doubt that there are people who have arrived in Ireland and it's in their benefit not to have a passport. It's in their benefit that their identity has been wiped. That's to their benefit. And it seems to me so silly by a public and by a government to presume the best in everyone.
This is it.
Like, it's so silly.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, of course, but we don't live in an ideal world, and there's so many cases. Do you remember Pamela Is It Way High? She was in Sligo maybe 10 years ago now, and her big story from Nigeria, her big story was that she got rejected for her refugee application, and she was appealing deportation because she'd had a daughter in Nigeria, and they circumcised the daughter in the hospital against her will, and the daughter died. So that's why she didn't want to go back to Nigeria. They did some research. She'd never had a daughter in a hospital in Nigeria. She was never circumcised. So she was maybe, some women do have their daughters in Nigeria circumcised, so that part of it is potentially true, but it wasn't true in her case.
Now, that cost millions, that case.
Yes.
I remember
yes.
that.
Yeah, $1 million. And speaking of refugees, poor old Joseph Palani, and this is farcical stuff. So they found 350 in cash on him.
350,000.
350,000, yes, 350,000. Now he's after killing the two gay lads. 350,000 on him. Now the family got that back, and the reason they got that back was, it was family money that we brought with us from our refugee thing in Kurdistan. And you go, that was 10 years ago, and you still got 350,000 in cash. And there's 6 sons in the family. Only one of them is a crazy, mentally ill lunatic, which they knew already. If you had 6 sons and you had 350,000 in cash, which of your sons would you give the 350,000 to look after? The mentally ill one, or your other 5 sons who are not mentally ill? You know, you wouldn't give it to the mentally ill son. So that's suspicious. And then on top of that, Joseph Palani applies for free legal aid. Now, he's got 350,000 in cash, you know, that would get you a lot of legal fees, but the government gives him the legal aid. 700,000 euros, 700,000 in legal aid. Now, the total advice that his solicitor, whoever it was, gave him was plead guilty, which he did. So the solicitor gave him 2 words of legal advice, and for that legal advice, the taxpayer paid her 700,000 euros. On top of that, Mr. Palani Sr. is in court. The Criminal Assets Bureau were trying to seize this and that and cut off his disability and job seekers allowance. And he's in court. No, I am disabled. No, I am looking for a job. And no, I've nothing to do with criminality. And it becomes slightly farcical. And say, particularly Kurdistan, I think one reason why people would be leaving Kurdistan is they were working for the Brits or the Americans. You know, a lot of them were, and it made sense in the whatever war that was going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we should ring up the British Foreign Affairs and say, hey, we have a family of your boys, they're loyal to you. Send the Palanis over to England. There you go. Happy days.
So you think MI6 should take their agents back?
Why not? Why not? It's gone to farcical levels.
Can I ask you on that case? And you would have been around Sligo at the time, as was I. There was, a period of time there where it looked like everyone had woken up to the danger of this kind of let everyone in, everything is equalled, But what I found really strange about it was, the victims were homosexuals. But the homosexual community came out in a very strange way and basically said, no, we're not going to recognise that there was any racial aspect to this, that there was no religious aspect to it. And there was. Like the man himself admitted.
Yeah.
And, if you go through the case documents at the moment, he's quite clearly said why he killed them was because they were homosexuals. And the reason that he done that was because his religion told him that this is a sin that's irredeemable. There's no... there's no getting out of that. And there was a third victim as well, we must say, who nearly lost an eye and all that over it. And yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I think with the homosexual community, and some of my best friends are homosexuals.
Oh, and I don't feel
same
as that.
But it's tightly controlled. You've got your leadership, you've got your funding streams, you got your key people in the different areas, and this is the party line, boys. And there would be some quite strong divisions in the homosexual community. You know, there'd be.
Well, I'm aware of that too. And you see, from its very formation, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because a gay man and a lesbian has nothing in common at all. A bisexual has nothing in common with a gay man or a lesbian.
Yeah.
If you know these people and you get along with them,
Yeah.
they have no commonality. So you just bundle everyone into the one group
Yeah.
and say, you know, this is it now.
LGBT, all the one, but it's not, you know. But it's, I suppose, like every movement, the church, the different churches, the political, you know, you have your kind of pyramid thing, and I know some people in the community, and they'd be maybe speaking out against, say, the stuff that's going on in schools, and they'd be gay themselves, but they're going, no, leave the kids out of it.
Yeah.
But they'll be ostracised. They won't get the invites to the parties. So it's all controlled, you know. If you
Well, I had a really interesting conversation with a lady, she's a lesbian, and she told me, do you know, in the initial periods, there was a lot of a drop-off when the B was added, the bisexuals, because a lot of people went, no, you're either one or the other.
yeah.
And then when they said that, it was like, no, we're all here. And then as the letters was added, there was more of a drop-off each time.
Interesting.
And I think the main one where a lot of people are dropping off now is the T, which is the transgenderism. But there is, like, you know, there's a plus, and the plus to me, I have a fair idea where the plus is heading to, and I don't think there's a lot of people in favour of that. But is this movement going to keep going on and on and on? And you know,
I hope not. I think it's interesting that they're so set against the reversion therapy, whatever you want to call it, and there's quite a big movement of people who used to be homosexuals and they just got out of the habit. I would regard it purely as a habit, and maybe as a thing for teenagers, a certain phase, you know, you'd be horsing around or whatever. And it's personally, I think most cases it's purely a habit. Any habit, you can, you know, retrain yourself. And
I don't know if it's a habit or not, but one of the things that I find really annoying about the modern age is that some people use their sexuality as their identity. And I hate that. You know, the last thing I want to know about you is what you like to do in the bedroom. I couldn't care. I really don't care.
1,000 other things to talk about.
That's what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah.
As long as you're not bothering kids or that,
this is it.
You know, I'm not concerned.
I've read some accounts of people who've converted back to heterosexuality, and he was saying when he was a homosexual, he was very involved in the movement. So his whole life was organising the homosexual meeting, going to the conference. You know, it was a big part of his life. The activism around it, and then, you know, when he started thinking differently, then that whole part of his life, that was part of the excitement of it. We're in this group together. We're going here. We're going there. We're doing this. We're doing the other thing. Now, you know, I do think, I definitely think it's being promoted. You know, it's not just, oh well, some people are like that, so go off and do it, which would be my attitude.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like that, well, don't harm anyone else, off you go. But there's definitely, they want to normalise it, they want to encourage it, they want to, I mean, why on earth are they promoting it so much in the schools according to the curriculum? And they don't mention at all that, you know, there are plenty of cases people who were homosexual for X amount of years, and then they go, oh, actually, what I really need is a nice, juicy, hairy vagina.
Yeah.
You know? But that's not mentioned at all, even though, you know, it exists.
Well, there's the other side of it too, which is there's people who were heterosexual and then later in life go, no. You know, it goes both ways, like.
Yeah, but I'd be...
But that flies in the face of born this way.
Of course. Yeah.
Do you know, because, like, how many cases is there of, we'll say, a man and he had a wife, love of his life, had a couple kids or that, but let's say maybe she dies, and then he realises as he gets a bit older, frankly, I really prefer the company of men. I don't have, you know, I'm not feeling the same way about other women as I felt about my wife, so I'm going on with this. And that flies in the face of the whole thing of born this way, because if you ask that man, well, you know, so you were gay all your life, he might go, well, no, I was perfectly happy with herself, but she's dead now, and I've just realised that I prefer the company of men, and no woman is ever going to be her, so, you know.
I would say there's two separate things. One is the sex and baby side of things.
Yeah.
You can only do that with women.
Yeah.
And the other is the company of men. And you can be, you can confuse them.
Yeah.
You know, I like the company of men,
yeah,
but not a homosexual.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think in maybe more so men than women, if you're working as a group, you know, as a tribe or whatever, it's a good idea for the men to be able to work together.
Yes.
And, you know, if you have a leader, a boss or whatever, it's a good idea for the other guys to respect that guy and go, he's the man,
yeah,
you know. So it's there's natural things in men that we work together, we like each other, but that's confused them with the whole homosexual thing.
Yeah, everyone head to Patreon and Spotify for the next part of the interview.
Anything interesting to close?
No, I'll tell you what. Head to Spotify or Patreon, because we're going to get into the election thing, and what you have to say is so controversial that I like my YouTube channel. So everyone, head to Spotify or Patreon, and we'll continue our conversation.
Well,
there.
just before we do go, can you just tell us what that device is on the table there, and why you have it, and the importance of it? Because I have two myself.
It's an electrosmog meter made by Cornet Microsystems, made in the USA, apparently, not in People's Republic of China. Expensive bit of kit, but it measures different electromagnetic properties. I usually use milliwatts per square meter. And there's electromagnetism everywhere. We use it in our bodies, in our brains, in our hearts. The sun is electromagnetic, the lights, it's all over the place. And everyone's built a bit differently. I've noticed I'm maybe a little bit more sensitive than some other people. And it's very interesting working with different things. For example, on the mobile phones, I was using a mobile phone the other day and I had this gadget up to it. And surprisingly, when I was flicking through the menu trying to find out how to make a call on it, that was one of the highest readings. And when I was actually on the call, it was considerably lower. Still not a safe level, but considerably lower. So one of the highest readings on it was flicking between the menus. I think if you download data, that's a high reading as well. I've noticed, say in Sligo town, for example, you have huge differences in the readings. On the river, the Garavogue River, say you got the glass house to your back, you're looking upriver, you got Cafe Oast on your left, you got the other Rockwood Parade on your right. So the Cafe Oast side of the river is very low readings, but the right-hand side of the river, looking upstream, is very high. So just the width of the river, a huge difference. Wine Street car park in Sligo, bonkers, off the scale.
I've tested that, and actually the glass house in Sligo that's if you look up,
yes,
that's where it all seems to be coming from there.
Yes.
The doors of the courthouse, massive. I mean, you'll peek a Trifield at the doors of the courthouse. I thought that was mad.
Yeah.
You're from Manorhamilton. There's a tower. It's not a tower, so it might be a tower now. Down there along the railroad, kind of.
Yes, yeah.
That is nuts, absolutely nuts, and the amount of residential houses around there. We've had great nights out, actually testing and stuff, and. Like, as you just said, we're all a frequency, you know, we're actually, everything is frequency. We're water interacts a lot with a lot of this kind of stuff. So, the fact that they've got a mobile device into everyone's pocket, that if you read the manual would tell you to keep it away from you, is mental, you know.
And as that, what was that girl? She ran in the election one time. She was absolutely
Mary O'Donnell, yeah.
On the 5G subject, she was brilliant on it.
Yeah.
And she said the fact that young men carry it in their pocket beside their beside their genitals where their fertility is coming from and all that. We have to finish.
We do indeed.
Diarmuid, just before we go, what are you smoking, Diarmuid?
This is
not a...
Wait till I get a close-up shot.
I certainly would. What are you smoking, Diarmuid?
a product called Herbacco. Ingredients include marshmallow leaf, rose petals, raspberry leaf, red clover leaf, fruit juices and honey. And there's also some extracts of herbs in there. All perfectly legal. A lad up near Ballyshannon makes it. He's exporting it to Holland and all sorts of places. And
so it is a commercial venture on his behalf.
Yes.
Yeah, wow, fair fuck son. Yeah.
Still to come in part 2 of the show.
A guy gets raped by a man, you're probably going to have an erection. This is the guy who's getting raped. So you're not one bit homosexual, but just the physical thing of it. So
there was so much information, misinformation, rumour, the whole lot. And nobody stood up and said, this is exactly what happened.
Robbing and stealing and prostituting themselves all day just to get the money for the fix.
The older fellas, you know, their own age group, they're not getting it from their own age group. So all of a sudden they're looking at guys in their 30s, 40s, do you know what I mean? And that's definitely something that's going on.
The fountains of milk that come out of the woman's breasts.
I think there's a lot of people coming to the conclusion, you know, the education system in Ireland, you're basically rewarding people for memorising.
You know, there's huge advantages for a woman to make a false allegation.